All right, I guess let's get started. How much? Sorry, I wasted 4 minutes getting set up. All right, so we have a couple of options. Oops. We can do Q&A first and then look at some questions, practice questions, or we can do practice question first and then do some Q&A. Any preference on how you want to do things? I'm just here for you, whatever you want. This is my only class left. I was like, I canceled my last section of SOS 315. I canceled the last lecture of SOS 100 because we're done. I'm just like, I'm just here for you guys. What do you want? You want the review questions first? All right. Jessica gets to set the agenda because she's the only one who wanted to answer. So, all right. Let's. I will change the settings on this a little bit so you can look it over a few times. And just give me half a second to adjust the stream. Uh-oh, not worky. Blackness. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Maybe this one? All right. Okay. Hey. Can't quite make it fit, but all right, whatever. There'll be dark edges. That's what you get for not coming to class. I know some people are sick. It's all good. All righty. Qu'est-ce que je fais? Oh, je sais pas. Okay. Maybe we'll use the Zoom on built into the browser. Yeah, that doesn't help. Okay. All right. So, just like, honestly, like, practice questions, you know, again, I will say, I just want to say one thing about the final exam. So, right, everything is fair game. Everything from Churching of America to, you know, the future of religion, all fair game. One thing I will say is there aren't any questions this time that are like, think of your own examples, right? So you had those on the, you're like, the shoulders relax, the smile comes out. Yeah, so there's none of those on this exam. So I've tortured you for 2 exams with that, and now my mercy is endless. Okay, so I'll go through. I got 5 practice questions. You'll be able to look over them, and I'll monkey with the settings again after class. This one, so I will say, right, it's non-cumulative, except like all of the exams in the course, it's kind of cumulative in terms of I can go back to those important concepts from the beginning of the class, right? We talked about our theories. We talked about, you know, Smith's What is Religion, and especially, you know, how religion works. And I you know, can make you use those to answer these questions. So, you know, sadly, it's non-cumulative in a cumulative way. All right. Because those, you know, we've been talking about a lot of these concepts all through the course. All right. So this one, which of Smith's causal mechanisms might account for the decline in the number of emerging adults classified as devoted from the first to second wave of national study of youth and religion? 5 to 8%. 5 in the first wave, you know, 8%. Sorry, well, it's down to 5 in the second wave, and it was at 8 in the first. Okay, this one, right, you just have to like figure out, okay, which one are we talking about? What's going on in the lives of young people as they're moving from adolescence into emerging adulthood? And the big one here would be that they are moving off and going to college, right? So what happens in college? Well, suddenly you're probably in a much more pluralistic environment. So you're looking at contextual effects, right? So this is, you know, you move from a place that's more religious to a place that's less religious, or vice versa, and it affects your religiosity. So in this case, right, if young people are going off to college, colleges on the whole are pretty irreligious places, somewhat, right? They're not, at least, you know, very much kind of focused on religion unless you go to like an evangelical college. So that's how you'd be like, okay, this is Smith's causal mechanism. I think it's number 3. I can't remember which one. Anyway, I think it's 3. So I'm picking, Smith's causal mechanism number 3, contextual effects. And this is what it is, right? So it says, you explain the causal mechanism like I just did, and this is what's going on in the lives of young people, which is why this mechanism fits the best, right? They're moving from probably a context that's a little bit more religious to one that is less so. All right. Pretty straightforward, I think. How do you feel about that? Yeah, Jessica.
Just so I can find it. What section did we talk about Smith's causal mechanism?
So that would be how religion works, right? So that I think is, hang on, let me find it. It's a good question. Now you see the disaster that is my file system. So if you ever wonder why I seem disorganized sometimes, I've been saying for the last 8 years that I need to go through and fix my file system. And for the last 8 years, I haven't. Yeah, so it's how religion works. 3. Right. So, there's all that stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah. Okay, causal mechanism. Right, 1, 2, 3. Contextual effects. I was right. Right, so that is in the 3. How religion works. Wait, I can't alt-tab back to where I was. Okay. Does that all make sense? Like I said, pretty straightforward question, I think. No big concerns. For those, I just want to make sure if anyone's watching at home, you can put in questions using the Slido. I see none, so we're good. All right. Yeah. How do I go forward? Let's go forward, not backwards. Upward, not forward, and always twirling, twirling, twirling towards freedom. Okay, so according to Fink and Stark, why did the upstart Protestant sects triumph over the more established faiths in America? Okay, so this is obviously a Churching of America question, and you'll recall that he points specifically to the Baptists and the Methodists as having done some different things from the older Protestant sects. And then, okay, so I guess I'll break down this part. What does Stark say about this, right? Okay, so they were more innovative, right? They were more a culture to the times, right? They adopted popular musical forms and adapted them to religious purposes. They were more attuned to their community members, right? Their pastors tended to come out of the community and hold other jobs, but were also people that spoke in plain language. So they were more kind of on the ground, well tuned to how people understood their lives as well. Were able to speak to them in language that made sense. They didn't cost the community a lot, right? Because they had other jobs, so they only took a small salary for being the pastor. And therefore, there was more resources available to the communities. I mean, if you want to get really specific into it, like the Methodists, right? They had their small kind of groups, cohorts, essentially. I can't remember what they called them off the top of my head. That, kind of kept an eye on each other and trained new members up in the faith, right? So they were very cohesive as compared to these pretty diffuse, professionalized kind of churches of the older genre. Okay, so that's why the upstart sects succeeded. Based on that, right, what prediction would Stark make about the future? Well, given that, some of those sects, some of the upstart sects are now getting old and professionalizing themselves and losing their appeal, Stark and Fink would suggest that new sects will arise, right? They will pop up, they will arise, they themselves will be more innovative, more appealing to people, and they are going to sort of kickstart some kind of religious revival, right? Or at least keep less innovative. Exactly right. Yeah, Jessica.
So the reason why Protestants
A little bit on the second part, extrapolate what would Stark say, right, about all of this. and how would he think the future is going to look? But I mean, you already have a hint, right? If you think of like self-limiting secularization, right? It's all built into that idea. And because so much of these ideas kind of flow together, right? It should all, sort of be familiar to you. Good? All right. All right. Which theory of secularization, which of the theories of secularization best explains the rise of moralistic therapeutic deism, and why? Okay, so again, I think you have to understand what moralistic therapeutic deism is, right? So you might want to just start with like a quick definition of moralistic therapeutic deism. And a lot of times when people are doing this, they just put like down those 5 creed items of MTD, just to kind of give themselves a definition. And then you got to pick your theory of secularization, right? So you've got your 6 choices, right? You've got your inherited model. So you got to think, does it fit? Does MTD point to, modernity being toxic for religion? Wouldn't really fit probably in this case because MTD is sort of a quasi-religious model. It still has a God, so it wouldn't fit that classic model that says religion is going away. Would it fit Bruce's, revised secularization, revised inherited model, rather, the revised inherited model, right? Late secularization. We're seeing secularization, but it starts late. Again, I don't know that the evidence, you could maybe make a suggestion there, and this is a question where, I have a particular answer I think is right, but if you make a really good case for a different one, I could also be moved to giving you either part marks or full marks. Late secularization, it can fit a little bit awkwardly, right? Maybe you could talk about less religious knowledge, right? The religious knowledge is less specific, so this is maybe the first step in the decline of religion. I don't think it fits super well, but probably the one that fits the best is Chavez, which is neo-secularization, right? Because what you're seeing fundamentally is a decline in religious authority in MTD, right? Religion is playing a smaller and smaller role in people's lives, right? It's there when they need it. It's kind of exists on a micro level, but on a macro level, like it's not part of their everyday decision making because God is far away, and and it's not a religion of prayer or going to religious services every week or anything like that. Right, so it's very much, on the macro level. Like on the micro, people still hold beliefs, but religious authority and the place it holds in society is definitely diminished in MTD. Right, make sense? I mean, then you have what other ones do you have? You have no secularization. You could make a case for no secularization as well, right? In that, these people all kind of still seem to believe in God, so it's a different sort of model, right? It's maybe more at-home religion. It's more personal. It looks more like Thomas Luckman's invisible religion in some ways, but they still ultimately believe in God, so no secularization. I actually think that's a decent case to make as well. And then what are the other ones? Self-limiting, probably not. Probably doesn't make a ton of sense because this is not a model that seems to be religion rising. And then post-secularism, Habermas's mind game, again, probably doesn't make a ton of sense. So I think I got all of them. I think I did. Yes. Yeah, all right, I'm good. Does that all make sense, right? Like there's a few different ways you could answer this question, and it really is going to come down to the why. There are some that are obviously, like, I think, neo-secularization and no secularization. The case is a lot easier to make. And the other ones, probably, I would say are quite difficult to make at the end of the day. All right. Any questions about, Jessica?
What were all the theories
Of secularization? So you've got the inherited model, the revised inherited model, or late secularization and religion as alien, right? That's Steve Bruce. No secularization from Rodney Stark. Neo-secularization from Mark Chavez. Self-limiting secularization, which is Stark and Bainbridge, Stark and Fink. And then post-secularization or post-secularism from Jürgen Habermas. You were just testing to see if I remembered all of them myself, weren't you? All right. I do. All right. Any other questions on this one? All right. So hopefully, these are pretty, I think, straightforward. I think. You're like, no, they are incredibly hard. What are you talking about? Okay. So I think this one would be easy. What does Glenn Stanton argue about the nuns? For only 2 marks, because you can look it up and find it on a slide. Right? Super easy to figure out what he says. How might his account change how we understand the growth of the religiously unaffiliated? Okay, again, that's pretty much on the slide. I'll walk you through the answer here. What theory of religion or secularization best fits his account? Okay, so what does Glenn Stanton say about the nuns, right? In principle, what Stanton says about the nuns is that actually we're making a big fuss about nothing because the nuns are not a new phenomenon. He essentially says these are people that were marginally religious to begin with, and now essentially they're just going through a change of identification, right? They were never that involved in religion. We're just going from a period where there was pressure to say, I'm a Methodist or I'm Catholic, even if you didn't care, to a period where we're not. But the nuns were always fundamentally there. We've just started categorizing them differently, and they've started to categorize themselves differently as well. How might his account change our understanding of the growth of the unaffiliated? We would see them not as a new phenomenon, right? We would see them as something that was always there and has always been kind of present, but we've just started categorizing them differently. So he says, Christianity is fundamentally just undergoing what he calls a clarification, right? Of who's really in and who was always kind of marginal. And now we're just categorizing the marginal in this no religion category because we've started to think about it in a different way. And what theory of religion or secularization best fits his account? I think probably here Stark's no secularization thesis makes the most sense, right? Because, you're not really seeing any change. A lot of the nuns don't really, still fundamentally believe, in something. But ultimately, it's not a massive difference. Like nothing has really changed, right? You could even make the case for no secularization, in terms of something like the myth of past piety, right? That we have this image of the past as everyone was super religious, but that's kind of not the case in a lot of ways, right? You could make some case for a lot of different theories of religion as well, right? You could maybe, potentially make the case for Thomas Luckman. I think Luckman's a likely candidate here. That ultimately religion has become much more personal and kind of invisible and deinstitutionalized in lots of ways, and the nuns sort of represent that. If there's another one that kind of makes sense to you, I'm trying to think through all the theories of religion, and there's a number. Maybe subcultural theory of religious strength from Smith, right? Like suddenly you have, just these very religious people who are building their own kind of intense communities and are under sacred umbrellas. There's a lot of possible answers here. The case just asks that you have to make a case for why you think it fits. Yeah, please.
Could the neo-secularization also work in the sense that at a micro level they still believe, but at the macro level they're not institutional?
Yeah, there's a less religious authority. So yeah, you could definitely use Chavez's neo-secularization theory here as well. I think the case is a little less strong, but if you make it well, you'll probably still get full marks. Okay. So, yeah, please.
I have a question. If we spam theory, are you gonna adopt it?
If you spam, sorry?
If we keep using the same, we use neo-secular,
like in every single answer?
Not everyone's already.
So in 2 different questions.
Yeah, 2 different
So here's the thing. When I go to mark them, I just see a list of answers. I don't see your name. So, okay, also don't do this. Don't be like, as I said in my last question, because I'm like, I don't know what that was, because I don't mark your exam all at once. I would mark all of this question, right, in sequence. It's really good for me because I don't have to change my brain space. I'm just like, no, maybe, no. There's occasional yeses in there too. I'm being a jerk. But yeah, I won't even know, right? And so sometimes people get 2 very similar questions and that freaks them out. A, it's a random shuffle what you get on the exam because I've got I don't have as many questions for the final, actually. I think I've got like 5 in each of the sections, which actually, now that I think about it, is a lot because there's a lot of sections on this one, except for the future of religion, which I think I only have 2. But so like, if you get 2 questions that are very similarly, just answer them straight up. I won't even know if you don't tell me like I got 2 questions that were very similar. I won't even know because it's unlikely that I'm going to go back and check through everybody's exams.
What slide was landscape?
Oh, you want me to go down to slides? Okay, this is in the nuns. I can find it. I know my own course. You can't trick me.
Actually, in the religious landscape slide.
Oh, is it in landscape? Okay. I'm like, it's possible. I know it's in either the nuns or religious landscape.
Slide
26, slide 26 in religious landscape. All right. You saved us from me having to scroll through. What I'm going to do it anyway to prove that it's there. Da-da-da. It has a big red book called The Myth of the Dying Church on the page. There it is. Ta-da. Slide 26. Okay. Maybe handwritten notes now are not working to your benefit.
It's too late now. It's late.
Objectively too late. Oh, yes. It's old school, right? The old school method. Okay. How do you feel about this? Like, okay with this question? Okay, perfect. And the last one, that's the last practice question. Okay. Which theory of religion or secularization best explains the difference between the religious landscapes of Canada and the United States, and why? So, here's this is a hard question actually. I know the answer, but I wrote the question. I think here you would probably want to go with market theory. And here's why, right? And I did talk about this in the course, so don't worry. Like, I'm not hitting you with anything new. Canada had a slightly more unified religious marketplace that was mostly mainline Protestant and Catholic without a lot of evangelicals. A lot of the religious innovation in the US, right, through the middle to late part of the 20th century actually came from evangelicals, right? Evangelicalism, filled in a lot of that gap. And because there were just not a lot of evangelicals in Canada, not a lot of market innovation, a lot of people went from the main line and just exited religion into that nothing in particular category, right? Because there was no kind of appealing religious system that really worked for them in spaces like the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, right? So less religious innovation, less kind of, a less dynamic religious marketplace, one that in effect sort of had 2 major groups, Catholics and mainline Protestants, especially the United Church, ultimately led to, a much quicker growth of the nuns in Canada. But yeah, this question, a little bit on the hard side. There has to be some variance. Are there other theories that you can make a case for? Potentially, I think you could make a case for neo-secularization, that Canada, differentiated its institutions in a much different way, right? Especially Quebec, right? Quebec, we see a lot of the loss, especially of Catholics, right? And the growth of the nuns in Quebec, driven by that fact that they went through a really hard differentiation in the 1960s with the Quiet Revolution. So you could, I think, potentially say that led to a faster growth of nothing in particular, right? More institutional differentiation at the macro level. That eventually sort of trickled down to the micro level as well. I keep walking in front of that projector and it's like I have like spots all over. Your faces are nothing but spots in my eyes. Anyway, I think market theory is a better answer, but there's a few different paths you could kind of take with this. That's the questions that I have as practice questions. I tried to vary them a little bit to give you some ideas what it might look like. I'm stern but benevolent. All right, or maybe not. Given the class average in this class, I'm going to go with benevolent. Okay, I'm going to have a fight with the chair probably at the end, being like, they were just really good. I don't know what to tell you. Or I mark the exam really super hard and destroy you all. No, I wouldn't do that. All right. Do we want to go to questions? I should have checked if there's any questions that have come online. Oh my God. So many questions. Okay. Why does Stark have 2 secularization theories? This feels like this should have been a question way earlier in the course. Why does Stark have 2 secularization theories? Because it was a development process, right? He's a guy that had a almost 60-year academic career in this field, and it's an evolution, right? So in the 90s, he's more talking about that no secularization, and then in the 2000s, sort of is like, well, maybe we have a self-limiting model, right? As he's writing the Churching of America, so that's why. Just to clarify, will you get 1 question from each section and 1 random question? Yes, that is my plan. And if I change it, I will let you know. But my plan is, yes, 1 kind of from each section, and then lucky question number 6 is just going to be a shuffle. So, again, this question feels like it should have been way earlier in the course. Okay, is Canada more irreligious than the U.S., though? I mean, in the sense that the nuns have grown much more quickly in Canada and now make up a much larger proportion of the Canadian religious landscape, yes. What happens below the line, right? Like, what do they actually believe is a different story. And I'm not going to retell you the story of the nuns because that involves me hitting my head against the wall again and being like, oh, man. So why is the course? So the content you're going to be tested on here is the stuff from Churching of America forward. All the questions are based on that. However, it doesn't mean you can abandon the concepts from the beginning of the class. I know I said that on day 1 because people asked, and I've been saying it throughout the whole course, right? Those concepts are really important. I have kept talking about them through the entire course, how these ideas all kind of fit together. That's why all the time I'm like, you should be thinking of, Peter Berger and the sacred canopy here, or plausibility, that's why I keep bringing up these topics. Yeah, please.
So are there any, because I know causal mechanisms are one of the main ones, and theories of secularization are one of the main ones. Are there any, other, main theory structures that we should know for the past ones, or kind of just it's a graph?
So, yeah, just causal mechanisms are fair game, theories of religion, and theories of secularization. That would be the big ones. So this is why I've said through the whole course that it's it's non-cumulative kind of. It's non-cumulative, except that those theories are really important because you can't understand anything through the whole course. And again, this is why I'm like, this would support Stark's argument that, there's no secularization. I'm trying to prime you all. I hope you were taking notes. If not, I can help ye. All right, so what is Chavez's main point with his neo-secularization theory? That you should have asked this question earlier. No, neo-secularization is really, right, that there's been a decline, not so much in subjective religiosity as the kind of cultural, or I guess, religious authority. I mean, the piece is called, secularization as a decline in religious authority that it comes out of. Right, so it's a decline in religious authority. Religion has less of a central place in society, and then you get secularization at definitely the macro level, and to some extent at the meso, right, religious institutions making decisions less on a religious basis. I will attempt not to repeat questions this time. If I'm inattentive, who knows? Sorry. I got distracted by your smiley face. It's so very charming. So basically, right, it can happen. You can get that secularization at the macro, meso. Meso is religious institutions make decisions less on a religious basis than one that's more secular, right? So University of Notre Dame being like, nah, we're not going to ban porn, even though the Catholic Church is against it. And the micro level, which is people make fewer, they might still be religious on a personal subjective level, but religion plays less into their decision-making structures, right? So Catholics still use birth control even though the church says nuh-uh. To put it elegantly. I believe that's exactly the
Hope so.
right, because the Pope said. It's spelled out beautifully in the 1968 encyclical Humanae Vitae, which I'm sure all of you have read. So, there we go. All right. Any other questions? Obviously, you can ask questions in person as well. I should lift my head from just the Slido. We'll let the Slido descend into darkness. Yeah, please.
So like on the practice questions when like each kind of part of the question was like given like marks, does that kind of correlate to how many points we gotta put or just in general?
No, that's just how important I think that part of the question is. So yeah, if it's like 7, that's just like focus on this part of the question. Don't focus on the first part of the question. That's only worth 3 marks. Explain that part quickly. The why is more important, right? So it's like, this is where you're getting all your marks. But no, you don't have to put 7 points. You can. That would be amazing. That'll make it very easy for me. I'm like, yes, you've got it. Or no, I don't know what any of these points mean. But, yeah, Jessica.
This is me just trying to pre-guess what some of the test questions are, but for Pew, will that be like a major factor? Because the Pew argument came out and then a bunch of theorists tore it to shreds, basically.
There could definitely be a question about that. Like, it wouldn't be as like what was wrong with Pew's methodology, right? Because I don't know. That just doesn't seem like an interesting question to me. But there could definitely be like, what were some of the objections, to some of the information that came from Pew and other sources. So did I see another hand? I thought I saw another hand. Oh, there's a question on the screen. Maybe that's what I was thinking. Are there any important points to the future of religion that you should focus on for the exam? I mean, there's a bunch of predictions in there, right, in terms of what Pew thinks is going to happen in 2050. And so you might want to think what theory of secularization or religion best sort of explains, the fact that in 2050, we're still going to be pretty religious, right? Like the world is going to be more religious than it is now in some, or equally religious in some ways, right? The unaffiliated are going to be a smaller percentage. What theorist might have suggested such a thing? Does it rhyme with Stodney Rourke? I don't know. I don't know. So think about that kind of thing. And then those kind of closing points, from Smith as to, what religion looks like, like why religion is going to persist. I don't have a question written about those, but maybe I will write some because they're kind of fun. There are a lot of graphs. Yes, many, many graphs. Okay, sorry. I think I've answered this. I'm going to go with yes. This might sound stupid, but if the nons are non-denominational and the nuns sometimes identify as religious, is there overlap between the groups? If I just say yes, can I? No, this is a complicated question. I'll answer it in good faith. Okay, because I got 12 minutes. Sometimes, right? Sometimes, at least, all right, we don't really know, but sometimes people do suggest that this is the case. For instance, Philip Jenkins in somewhat earlier arguments, when the nuns were more of a nascent phenomenon, suggested that at least some of them were probably non-denominational Christians that were like, I don't like religion, because there's this ideology in non-denominational Christianity that's like, I'm not part of a religion, I'm part of a relationship with Jesus, which, whatever. And so they would check like no religion on their surveys, and then be like, I go to church every week, so that people like me can hit my head against the whiteboard when we think about what they're saying. So there is a possibility of that, but I think, we can most of the nuns, as we saw, in Thiessen and Wilkins Laflamme's data, don't attend services. They're not particularly religious, right? It's like really, really small percentage that are actively religious. So that really tiny percentage might be non-denominational Christians who are sort of misidentifying themselves according to the categories that I want them to be in. But for the most part, the nuns are just nothing in particular, right? They're not engaged in religion. They're atheist, agnostic, or religiously unaffiliated? Hang on. All right, I think I answered that. I'll answer this question, then I'll answer your question. There's a lot of graphs. Yes, there are. How closely should we be studying the graphs, and how would we use them in the answers? So if you want to make reference to particular slides, you definitely can, right? That said, I think for the most part, be aware of what the trends are, right? Like, do you have to know the specific percentages? No. But you definitely should know what, I showed you all of these graphs for a reason, what all of this points towards, right? What is the directionality of kind of religious growth or shrinking, the growth of the nuns, what religious groups are growing, what are shrinking, the why, but you don't have to know like the specific numbers. If you want to be like, hey, as shown on slide, the chart on slide X, great. I'll go and look it up and be like, yes, you've got it. But if you don't do that, it's not going to cost you. I hope I answered that question. I think I did. I lost my mousey. There it is. Jessica.
Just to clarify, so nuns, N-O-N-E-S, that is people who were non-denominational, were just nothing in particular. But then you have your N-O-N-S nuns who are non-denominational Christians.
Yeah, so the N-O-N-S, non-denominational Christian, N-O-N-E-S, religiously unaffiliated. The final sounds a little harder than midterm 1 and 2, as we have to link these concepts back to earlier material. Sure. If you say so. I've been trying to tell you this all along. Been hinting at it the whole time. Yes, please.
Was there a spelling and grammar?
No. I don't mark spelling and grammar. I just need to be able to understand what you're saying. Like, if I understand basically what you're saying and the grammar is a complete mess, as long as don't Google translate it through 6 different languages and dump it back in, because I'm going to be like, Rodney Stark thinks that gradually the watermelon will decline. Interesting. But if it's like basically comprehensible, I'm just like, cool. Argument, not spelling and grammar. I mean, you don't have that much time to make things fancy and shiny, so don't worry about making things fancy shiny. Yes. Religious nuns are the same as normal nuns, to be distinguished from the nuns that wear black hats and robes. Those are N-U-N-S's. There are no questions about nuns on the exam, but nuns and nons for sure. Let's just play with words to confuse you all.
Sorry, I'm asking a lot.
No, fine. Well, that's what we're here for, and you have 8 more minutes to do so.
For the non-cultural factors, is it possible that we have to relate it back to the early theories of religion, like that ties to this, that ties to this, like community one?
That is possible, though.
Trying to read your eyes.
I'm trying to. There's definitely a question on those factors. Let me hang on. I'm trying to remember what they are because
Pull it up and show us all.
yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be nice? But no, that's cheating, sort of. Is it cheating or helping? I don't know. Right.
We're building community.
And isn't community the most important thing? Do you really care about your grades, or was the real grade the friends you made along the way? I'm sorry. I somewhat drive my children insane by saying that sometimes. Okay, hang on. Hang on. I see those questions. Hang on. I know this is like thrilling. You're on the edge of your seats. Yes. There is one question like that that asks about either okay, I'll say specifically, it's about one of the life's factors, and a question about which theory of religion best fits, right? So I won't tell you which factor. I won't tell you which. Well, I mean, theory of religion, but kind of. Let me just double check this one. I'm just scaring you now. Oh, that was the same one. Does anyone else have questions, or do you just want me to sit here and look at it? Yeah. I think you have 2 hours, right? So 6 minutes or 6 questions divided by 120 minutes. It's pretty good. I can't do math because my brain is spaghetti at this point in the term. But thankfully I have a calculator. So 120 divided by 6, you get 20 solid minutes. You get double time, basically. Yeah, please. Any tips? Hydrate. Get a good night's sleep. Know the material. What's that? Studying helps. I would probably just make yourself a quick breakdown of all of those causal mechanisms, theories of religion, and theories of secularization to have as cheat sheets so that you can be okay, now I know this question is from this section, and I've got my flashcards of theories of religion. I'm just going to peel through them until I hit one that I think works and then go from there. Yeah, Jessica.
Just because it's been mentioned a few times in the course, could you just define neoliberalism?
Neoliberalism? So neoliberalism is an economic philosophy that mostly was pioneered in the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan that specifically stresses that economics should return to its liberal roots, specifically free markets, little government interference, and with a stress on things like free trade. You thought you were going to stump me with that one, didn't you?
No, it's just kind of was fuzzy on it.
Stump the chump. All right, I got you. All right, any other questions? Slido world or in-class world? Real world or the digital world where the Digimon live? Agumon, Warp Digivolve 2, Professor Mon. Yeah, please.
We can still do it anytime during the day.
Yes, yeah. So technically I am cheating by allowing you to do it at any time of the day, but I'm going to do it anyway because no one has the power to stop me. So I have unlimited power unless I get in trouble, in which case I will have limited power. But just don't tell anyone. But yeah, so basically it's open that entire day from midnight to 1 minute before midnight. And I mean, you have to be done at 11:59 or it'll close, but you get 2 hours from whenever you start. So yeah, and I will try to man the email as best as I can that day. Ding dong. Oh, Amazon's at my door. Cool. I'll try to keep up with email as best I can. I'm on campus, and I will come to this room at the appointed time if you want to chill and do it here on these tiny, horrible desks, not designed for humans or computers. Maybe people in the 70s had really small hands. I don't know. But yeah, I will be here that day if you have questions, and probably in my office, before that, and after for a little bit. During whatever the scheduled exam time is. So I can't remember what it is, but because central scheduling has a scheduled time, but I don't remember what it is. So whenever it is, I will be here. All right. It's been fun, everyone.
Hi, for the exam, the practice questions, it seems like some questions can have some subjectivity, as you had mentioned.
Definitely.
So, would you still give hard marks in that case if we made a good feedback?
I might even give full marks, right? If the case you're making makes sense and you present a good argument as to why, I'll probably be yeah, makes sense. That's good. It's only if you like presented something that makes absolutely no sense, right? So it's like you explain it with like post-secularism, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't understand
definitely.
how that works. But yeah, as long as it kind of, you definitely, for writing something, you'll get marks. For writing something that kind of makes sense, you'll get a good chunk of marks. And then, yeah, if you make a good case, you might get even full marks, even if I don't necessarily agree with you.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps a lot. I was a little worried about that.
Oh,
but
yeah,
thanks.
no worries.
A random question.
Of course.
Do you take selfies?
Do I take
Can
selfies?
you take a picture?
You want to take a picture of me?
Yeah.
Sure. What do you want?
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
No problem. Have a good day. Yeah, I've never had a student take a selfie with me before. Cool. Should have done it in front of my Rodney Stark shrine. That should have been where we did it.